everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Ari Temkin of OrangeBloods.com. You can also catch me on SiriusXM's Big 12 Radio, 7 to 10 a.m. Central Time on channel 375 every single weekday. Today, I'm getting you caught up on what happened in the Big 12 this weekend while Texas was on the bye, and the Big 12 championship picture becoming clearer and clearer. And Texas still somewhat in that championship chase. Somewhat. Gonna have to win out though, obviously. All right, we'll get to all that in a second, but first, make sure if you've not yet already to hit that subscribe button. Also, ding, 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 ring the bell. That way you're always notified when we post new videos. And if you like what you're watching, give it a thumbs up. And first, before we get to all of it, Texas Tech decided to fire Matt Wells. So he would be the first coach fired in the Big 12 this year. So now Tech is looking for a new head coach, and really, for good measure, Matt Wells is a good guy, but as this team was 5-2, and after a loss this week to Kansas State falls to 5-3, and they have the four best teams in the conference left in their schedule, with at Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State at home, and then at Baylor to close out the year. So it's a pretty good chance that this team is not going to be bowl eligible after starting the season 5-2. But more on Texas Tech and Kansas State, an abomination of a game, coming up in a moment. But first, let's start with Oklahoma. Oklahoma should have lost to Kansas. It's my alma mater, with all due respect, but my God, Oklahoma, thinking about the college football playoff? Are you crazy? It boggles my mind. Oklahoma, after week 8, showed that it is not a college football playoff contender. I repeat, they might be undefeated, and I get it. They're number 4 in the country. They ain't a championship contender. They're not even the best team in the Big 12 right now. I don't know how you could argue otherwise. And here's the thing with Oklahoma. Their defense is really bad, and that was what was supposed to set this Oklahoma team apart from years past. Alex Grinch had really rounded this defense into form, and it was going to be a formidable defense. And it has been bad. Really bad, especially their pass defense. Oklahoma is currently 114th in the nation in opponent passing yards per pass attempt at 8.9. This means that Oklahoma is giving up 8.9 yards per every pass attempt against them. Almost a first down. It gets worse. In their last 3 games against Texas, TCU, and Kansas, TCU and Kansas are 2 of the worst teams in the Big 12. They're giving up a whopping 11.3 yards per pass attempt. That, by the way, in that 3-game stretch, 129th out of 130 teams. They're giving up 294.9 passing yards per game, which is 121st in the country out of 130 teams. They're even giving up 6.1 yards per play to their opponent. 6.1 yards per play for a team that thinks it's championship caliber. That's 104th in the country, not championship caliber. Oklahoma has given up 34 points a game in their last 3 games to Texas, TCU, and Kansas. And TCU and Kansas are 2 of the worst teams in the Big 12. Kansas is the worst, and TCU may very well be second to worst. Maybe it'll turn around for them. Maybe there's some sort of magical pill defensively you can take to make your team better. They do have some injuries, but my God, this week was an absolute joke of a game for Oklahoma, and it is an absolute joke of a game for Oklahoma defensively. Now, Caleb Williams continues to play well, but Oklahoma has Texas Tech before a bye, and then they close with Baylor on the road, Iowa State at home, and Oklahoma State on the road. And Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State have 3 of the best defenses in the Big 12. And Oklahoma State and Iowa State, which we'll get to in a moment here, have 2 of the best defenses in the country. So we'll see what those veteran defenses do against a true freshman quarterback who's feasted so far on really bad defenses like Texas, TCU, and Kansas. Oklahoma should have lost to Kansas. They were 38.5-point favorites. And Kansas hadn't covered a spread all year. Funny. Now, Oklahoma is still 5-0 in conference play, but they're not going to win the conference. Not this year. Sorry. Behind them is Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State that are all sitting at 3-1. Now, again, Oklahoma has to play all three of those teams, and Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and Baylor all have fairly easy schedules from here on out, with the exception of having to play Oklahoma, and Baylor and Iowa State still having to play Texas. And this is where Texas could still reasonably get in the Big 12 championship picture if Oklahoma loses those three games to Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State, which they could very well do. Or if Oklahoma State ends up losing a couple more games, which one of those would have to beat Oklahoma at the end of the year, and then they'd have to lose to either West Virginia, Texas Tech, Kansas, or TCU. Said it was slim, right? But look, if Texas wins out, they would have beaten Baylor and Iowa State, two teams in the thick of that race, and would have knocked Iowa State out for the most part in doing so. Again, very tough to think that Texas could still win a Big 12 championship, but there are possibilities that exist. So we'll get to those possibilities as they start to unfold as we get down the road. But they're going to need an upset of Oklahoma State at some point from here on out. Oklahoma State's a really good football team. If you missed Oklahoma State, Iowa State over the weekend, it was the game of the weekend in the country, certainly in the conference, obviously, too. And, I mean, it was just a really good football game, quite frankly. It was good offense, good defense, incredible plays being made by wide receivers. Brennan Presley of Oklahoma State had a ridiculous catch between two defenders. Spencer Sanders threw an absolute dime to Tay Martin, which put Oklahoma State on top 21-17 before Iowa State went down the field and scored the game-winning touchdown for them. There was ridiculous plays by Xavier Hutchinson. There was a horrendous officiating gaffe from the Big 12 when Xavier Hutchinson caught a pass and streaked down the middle of the field for a touchdown, looked back behind him to see where the defender was, and was called for a taunting penalty, which took the touchdown off the board. It was one of the most egregious penalties I've ever seen watching college football, but they were still able to score on that possession and overcome that horrible call to win the game. And in fact, you talk to people that were at the game, and that call being missed really galvanized Jack Trice Stadium. And watching the game, I mean, that camera was shaking throughout the rest of that football game. That crowd was insane. And, I mean, at the end of this game, this is how close the margins were in this game. Oklahoma State missed two field goals, one from 50, one from 32, and lost the game by 3 points. And then Oklahoma State had a 4th and 1.5, and they basically threw a screen pass to Tay Martin, tried to let him get the 2 yards, and it looked like he may have been able to get there and then was stopped just short into a brick wall. The spot had him just shy. And look, they did review it, and they upheld the call on the field. Oklahoma State fans were mad. Iowa State fans thought it was the right call. Of course, I mean, you can't tell. Did he get a first down? I don't know. And quite frankly, it was difficult to see because the camera angles were so bad, and I hope that wasn't the camera angles that the officials were looking at when reviewed, because there were just no good, clean looks in terms of did he get to the first down. You'd hope they'd have better looks at it, but I don't know how they didn't. And at the end of the day, it was such a close play. And all I'll say on this is, on 4th down, he should probably pass beyond the sticks. I hate the call to throw short of the sticks on 4th down and tell your player to go get it. I get it. Sometimes you can convert those, but, I mean, you run into opportunities like that where you're now beholden to the right spot. Just throw the ball beyond the sticks, period, in a 4th down situation. Firm believer in that. So Iowa State and Baylor right there. Baylor having beaten Iowa State having beaten Baylor, and Oklahoma State having beaten Baylor. Just this mix of this team beat that team, who beat that team, who beat that team, right? It's just this weird mix where nobody has the edge there. But they're all a game and a half behind Oklahoma, and all of them, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State, still have Texas Tech and TCU, two of the worst teams in the conference, left on their schedule. In terms of the other games of the Big 12 this weekend, Kansas State outscored Texas Tech to end their 8-game Big 12 losing streak, 15-0 in the second half after being down 24-10 at halftime. As good of a football game as the Iowa State-Oklahoma State game was, Kansas State-Texas Tech was that bad. Just a brutal football game. I mean, Kansas State had 12 penalties for 93 yards and won the football game. With a 24-10 lead, Kansas State punted on the opening possession of the second half. And I don't know why, but Texas Tech decided not to field the punt, and so it goes inside the 4-yard line. And then they run a delayed handoff on the first play at their own 4-yard line, and Kansas State snuffs it out for a safety. You run a delayed handoff in your own end zone? What the hell are you doing? After not fielding a punt? And then worst of all, On the game-winning touchdown drive for Kansas State in the fourth quarter, Texas Tech had a penalty illegal hands to the face on a 3rd and 31. And you can see now why Texas Tech decided to fire their head coach this week, because, well, Matt Wells wasn't getting it done. They were sitting at 5-2, and with this loss to Kansas State, Texas Tech now closes the season. Oklahoma on the road, Iowa State and Oklahoma State back-to-back weeks at home, and then at Baylor. So they close the season with 4 games against the top 4 teams in the Big 12. So they're probably not going to get to bowl eligibility despite being 5-2 and now 5-3. Well, and as for TCU and West Virginia, TCU's been absolutely brutal this year defensively. My God, it's just hard to believe. And West Virginia won their first Big 12 game on the road since 2019. Brutal loss for Gary Patterson and company at TCU. 3 turnovers in this game, 2 by quarterback Max Duggan and a fumble by Quentin Johnston. Offense trying to do a little bit too much to try to make up for how bad the defense is for TCU this year. All right, that's a wrap of Week 8 in the Big 12. I'm Ari Temkin. Make sure to subscribe if you have not yet already. Ding, ding, ding. Ring the bell. That way you're always notified when we post new videos. And if you liked what you watched, and certainly if you're still watching, give it a thumbs up. That way other people will find this video. But for now, peace.